Hey, I want to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Pankaj Raval on the line. He's founder of Carbon Law Group. Pankaj, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
All right, man. So lots of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives watch this show. And when we talk about covering ourselves, whether it's contracts or otherwise, hey, we need help. So great to have you on today and love this topic. So really creating small business contracts. We'll talk about that and more. But before we get into that, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Pankaj, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Pankaj, what mission matters to you?
It's really the mission of helping entrepreneurs thrive and grow. And it's in that process is building these transformational relationships with entrepreneurs so they can go from just transactions to really building transformational businesses. And that's what we pride ourselves in.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's what I know you for, by the way. So I mean, we've gotten to know each other through different events and just being out and about. And I see you come up, and I hear you. People talk about you. And I always hear good things. So I was excited to invite you onto the show to get into like how you're helping business owners. But before we get into that, like, how did all this start for you? Like when you're going into law, like how did all that come about?
Great question. And I would say that the genesis story is that I was a big I was a big like fan of Mahatma Gandhi growing up. Just being surrounded by literature. My parents, very involved in kind of social work, and I read his autobiography, My Experiments with Truth, and probably around 13 or 14, and it really just changed my life. I think in many ways, it was so captivating to see someone who could have such a profound effect on the world. And it was from that point on that I knew I wanted to do something in social work. I wanted to do something that would have an impact. And I think it was no coincidence that Mahatma Gandhi was a lawyer before he was a revolutionary, before he helped free India from the shackles of colonial British rule. So I think it was that book that really changed my mind and allowed and put me on a trajectory to doing social work and helping people and serving. And as a lawyer, I get to do that today. I'm very fortunate that I get to work with now, over probably thousands of clients over the years and helping them build businesses. And that's kind of where it started. And I originally wanted to do human rights law, but after working with Amnesty International in college, I found it a little bit depressing and sad because unfortunately, while Amnesty International does great work, it oftentimes is after the fact. It's after something has happened that is kind of so catastrophic and disheartening. And you hear so many horror stories of atrocities happening around the world. And I said, well, to me, I said, well, what could help prevent this? What could help alleviate this? And my philosophy was, well, if you can uplift people socioeconomically, if you could provide jobs, if you could provide a better economic climate, then maybe that could solve a lot of these problems around the world that I think are caused by just inequality and lack of opportunity in certain nations. So it's obviously more complicated than that, but I think that has a lot to do with it. Is when you have a strong rule of law, when people can depend on that and know that their rights are protected, I think you have the opportunity to really grow as a society.
Yeah. And going maybe back a little bit further, you're coming on the show, I had to bring this up. You got a history of entertainment as well. Like come on, man. I'm not letting you off the show without that.
Well, at least, yeah, as long as
you can take me to the tap in, you can take me to the MTV days. I don't know, but you gotta give me something.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I do find myself, a multifaceted interest in life.
Okay, that's a very lawyer way to say it. All right.
No, so yeah, growing up, my parents, I think I was a very ADD kid. I think I'm probably still a little bit ADD. As maybe viewers can hear, I tend to speak fast, which I tell my clients, you want a fast speaking lawyer. If they're charging by the hour, you want a fast speaking lawyer. So growing up, my parents showed me a lot of kind of Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire movies, and I love to dance. Growing up, I At 4 years old, my parents would have me perform for our guests Michael Jackson routines. Like I had a Michael Jackson jacket,
Yeah.
I had the whole get up, I had the glove, at like 4 years old, and I would perform for all the guests. And I just loved dancing. I still today love dancing. From there, my seeing these old movies, I loved the percussion. I loved seeing tap dancing, and
Yeah.
that's something about it just really captivated me. And the funny story is that I went. My mom said, "Okay, yeah, sure, let's go try it out." I was very lucky to have such supportive parents.
For
And my
sure.
mom said, let's go to a dance class." And when I was living in, I was born in Chicago, so we went to a
Mm.
studio in Chicago, and I went in and I saw all these girls in tutus, and I was probably 5 years old, and I was like, "Oh no, 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 that's not for me. That's not for me." but sure enough, I kept on enjoying like watching
Mhm.
those movies. Gene Kelly was kind of a hero of mine growing up.
Yeah.
I read all his books and read everything about his life. And when we moved to Tucson when I was around 7, we went again to a dance studio, and there was another, I think, one or two guys in the class, and I
Yeah.
said, "Okay, cool. I think I got some camaraderie here. We can do this." And
Mhm.
and I learned for probably I studied tap for probably 20 years or more.
Wow.
Learned in New York at the Broadway Dance School. Spent time in learning in DC as well when I was out there. I love
Wow.
doing kind of the percussion, Savion Glover type tap dancing.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I remember like leaving baseball practices early to go to tap like performances growing up, and I occasionally got I got some
Mhm.
flack from people, but honestly, it was
Mhm.
the one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And I
Mhm.
mean, and also obviously, I think anything that makes you quote unquote different or weird, I think
Yeah.
is a superpower when you get older.
Oh, for sure.
Is my philosophy, and I'm glad I kept with it. I'm glad my parents can encouraged me to continue to do it, because
Yeah.
through tap dancing, I met so many people. Took me so many
Mhm.
different places, and it was a great creative outlet, honestly,
Yeah.
for the energy and all that I had. And is when you start dating and things like that, it doesn't hurt to be able to
Yeah,
learn
you have the
to dance.
skills.
I
So
think my wife might have married me for partially for some of my dancing skills. I like to think, so her and I love to dance together. We love to like do
ah,
like Latin dancing and all different types of dancing. She's a great dancer, so
hmm.
yeah, and something I try to have pass on to our kids as well. So yeah.
At what point in your life did this concept of mindfulness kind of present itself? Was it through through your dance career? Was it later in life? Like how was that introduced and how did that come about?
So mindfulness, I've been exposed to it off and on doing like different spiritual practices. As my
Mhm.
parents were part of this group called Swadhyay, and but they didn't really talk too much about mindfulness. It was in when I went to volunteer in India. I was
Mm.
fortunate to be part of a group called IndyCorps, and IndyCorps is essentially it was derived from the model around Peace Corps, and it started
Mhm.
by three siblings. And what they said is they wanted to do something for second generation Indians to go back to India to do development work, to do volunteer work and
Mm.
service work. And lucky, serendipitously in my life, I've had all these serendipitous moments. I was at a dinner party in Tucson, and someone's sibling had been part of IndyCorps. And I said, "Oh wow, that sounds amazing." And I knew I didn't want to go straight from undergrad to law school, so I said, This sounds like an amazing experience to do something like this between undergrad and law school." So I applied, and it's a longer story, but I applied for the program. The application was probably more intense than Harvard, than any of the Ivy League
Mm.
schools out there, because they had, I think, a 50-page application and then 5 interviews to be
Wow.
selected for this. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
it was no joke. They wanted to make sure that you were committed to the cause, and really you were the right fit for this
Mm.
program, because you'd be spending a year in the villages doing volunteer work. And
Mm.
I made it through all the interviews, made it through the application. I felt like I had a really strong chance, but they said that, well, we really like you, but we don't have the right project for you, we feel. It was
Mm.
like really crushing for me. But part of me, the thing I think about me, that I
Mhm.
I don't take no, for an answer easily. So I said, well, that's fair, but I'm coming anyways. And I went. I came, and they said, "Well, okay, fine. You can work with us maybe on the administrative side, supporting the fellows." And honestly, it was the best experience, and probably better than I would have had I been a fellow, because
Wow.
I went to India, spent a year there, did the fellowship program with all the other fellows, kind of
Mm,
did the training, and then I worked with the organization, helping them build like a website to connect short-term volunteers. Then I
mm,
went to the coast of Gujarat to work on a legal case protecting
mm,
fishermen's rights. So I got to research the Indian Constitution, understand, okay, what are arguments we can make to protect their
mm,
land, because they were being kicked off by these larger corporations.
mm.
And then I went to Dharamsala or McLeod-Ganj, where the Dalai Lama lives, to learn yoga as well as tutor Tibetan monks in English. So that's
Mm.
where I really, that year is where I really learned
Wow.
mindfulness and meditation. I was there meditating in
What
the
was that?
temple.
What was that age group? Like, what were you about
It
then?
was probably like right after college, so 21 to 23, maybe. Yeah.
Whoa, what
Yeah.
a amazing time to be experiencing all that and
Yeah.
how that
Yeah.
shapes your concept of what happens going forward. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just everyone there. It was such a transformative experience. I mean, I'm
Oh my
so
gosh.
fortunate today to even like be part of that, because I don't think
Mm,
the organization is doing it anymore. They I think
mhm.
after about 12, 13 years, they said, okay, we want to do something else now. I think it was hard to run it. Um,
Oh, for sure.
but yeah, so yeah, I was fortunate to have that window and find out about it. And that's where serendipity comes in.
Mm.
It's like just being out there meeting people, and you find out about these things. And but
Yeah.
being there in that year, honestly, one of the
And
one of the
that
things that
was before law school, right?
that
Just to
was
make
before
sure.
law school. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
actually
what I
deferred
thought.
my
Boy.
admission a year to do
Yep.
that program. And being there around people who are so dedicated to just service, it
Yeah.
was such a different feeling. Where here in the West, we're like, okay, how can I do better? How can
Yeah.
what can I do to be
It's
better?
gotta be infectious, huh?
Yo, it's gotta
Yeah.
be. It was absolutely infectious. It was everyone left their lucrative careers. Everyone was very successful,
Mm.
their jobs, and said, "Okay, I want to do this work." And
Yeah.
they were there just to serve. We were paid $100 a month as a stipend
Mm.
to live, so that we lived that 4 or 5 guys. We lived in a two bedroom apartment
Wow.
in right next to the Mahatma Gandhi ashram. This is the ashram where Mahatma Gandhi led the Salt March
Mm.
in India. It was in Ahmedabad, and we would have these mats that are probably like this thick,
Yeah.
and we'd lay them on the ground. We'd sleep on them. In the daytime, we'd stack them up, and that was our couch. And then we did that for months on months. And honestly, though, I don't. It was rough. I don't remember really complaining. I don't. It was so amazing because we got up in the morning, went to the ashram, helped out. We went to the slums and across the ashram and worked with
Mhm.
them in their community centers, helped build community centers. I was teaching them
Mm.
kids music for a little while and rhythm. This is when stomp was really big, so I would teach them to play music with all the cleaning supplies, just for
Mhm.
fun, just to add some levity in there. They live these very difficult lives. They live in
Yeah.
the shanties, there of Bombay, and but they were so happy. These kids were so
Mhm.
happy and so pure, their soul,
Yeah.
that it was absolutely amazing. And those the relationships I built then, I
Mm.
still have today. These are still some of
Mm.
my closest friends today. I'm very lucky to kind of have been around them and try to continue that. And today I try to carry on that idea of service with our law firm.
Mhm.
And with everything we do, is
Yeah.
how do we serve more? How do we be more generous with our time? How do we be more generous with how we can help
Mhm.
people?
Would you say that that working on some of those early cases when you were in India, would you say that kind of solidified part of your path for like what was next with law school and everything else?
I think so, but honestly,
Mm.
when I got to law school, it was kind of a rude awakening, because it
Yeah,
wasn't the like I'm going to help the disenfranchised, I want to help the
for sure.
downtrodden. It wasn't like that. It was like taking contracts classes and taking
Yeah.
con law and taking other classes that weren't really. I felt a little bit disconnected, because law school is all
Mm.
theory. They don't teach you really anything practical. You can go to
Yeah.
maybe take some clinics, and you can participate in some clinics to help people here and there. But I felt it was very theoretical, and that was
Mm.
challenging for me, because I wanted to do something that had impact. And
Mhm.
here I was learning about these cases that I felt like, how are they related to actually helping people dealing with these difficult circumstances.
Mm.
But by the end of law school, I realized you have to have that. It's really, law school is teaching you how to think. It's teaching you how
Mm.
to analyze. It's teaching you how to find information and be resourceful. And it's those skills that have helped me be a successful lawyer today. Is how do I be resourceful, find the answers to my clients, because even if you
Mhm.
don't know, because the truth is most lawyers don't know before you talk to them, because
Yeah.
there's so many nuances to the law, and every case is different, and every situation is different.
Yeah. And so, just kind of fast forwarding this a bit. So you're in law school, and at some point, whether it could have been in law school, it could have been after, but at what point did you choose, like, I'm going to work lot of different things you can do when you get out of law school. So a lot of different types of law. When did you decide, or like, how did it come about that you said, you know what, my heart's with small business owners and business owners? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah. So I think I bounced around a lot early on. I knew I wanted to
Hmm.
get just a variety of experiences early on in my career. So I did
Yeah.
securities litigation for a while. I did employment litigation. I did some personal injury. I tried everything. I did bankruptcy.
Hmm.
And it was through that I realized, okay, here's what I like doing, and here's what I don't like doing. In law school, I
Hmm.
worked for a lawyer in Tucson who had me do trademarks. And I mean, I don't think I was really equipped to do trademarks at that point, but I learned. I kind of, I taught myself a lot of it,
Yeah.
and was able to handle the trademark work for him. And
Mhm.
I knew, like, I really enjoyed that. I used to design logos and design,
Yeah.
do graphic design. Actually, before undergrad, I almost went to design school for a while in FIT, and I did a
Mm.
summer program at FIT, thinking, oh, maybe I want to do something creative. And I decided against that. Who knows? Maybe it
Mhm.
might have been influenced by external influences. Who knows? But I decided, I'm going to choose the path of law. And but I always enjoyed, the creative side of things. So I still
Mm.
and I found trademark law allowed me to kind of look at logos, help people to think about
Mm.
logos. How do you create a strong mark versus what's a weak mark?
Mhm.
So I enjoyed that. And then working with small businesses, actually in law school. University of Arizona actually was one of the first that
Yeah.
had a clinic for startups. So there
Mhm.
was a startup lawyer in Tucson that would teach the class, and he would essentially treat us like his own law firm, and we
Mhm.
would be consulting with the MBA students on their business ideas. So it was
Mm.
pretty cool that we got to apply the intellectual property work we
Mm.
learned, the corporate work, and apply it to what these MBA students were doing, and advise them, okay, how do you protect your IP rights? How do you think about
Yeah.
IP? How do you think about structuring your ownership of your company? And that's
Mhm.
really where I found this is what I wanted to do. This is so much fun. I love working with startups. I love all the new ideas. And that's really what kind of set me on my trajectory.
Mm. And so now you're in working with startups, with business owners. I mean, one of the things that you and I talked about, lot of different ways we could have taken this interview, but one of the core things that you mentioned were oftentimes lacking for small businesses, and is are contracts,
Right.
and that's where maybe a lot of individuals either don't protect themselves, or they just don't. They grow. They don't think about after that growth that, hey, they're not, just a startup anymore, they're a larger company. So maybe they need to think about, rethink the way they do, or maybe that contract they had before is not necessarily, never was the best, and it was a band-aid at the time, but time to update things.
Yeah.
Like, where do you want to start with this? Like, how do you want to unpack this?
Yeah, so the discussion about contracts, I think, is interesting, because
Mhm.
there's so many different types of contracts we could be talking
Yeah.
about. There's lease agreements, there's contracts, partnership agreements,
Hmm.
there's service agreements. So you can't really say, okay, there's a one size fits all when it comes to
For sure.
contracts. But like, for one example I'll give you that came up just recently was that someone came to me. It was a friend of a friend saying, hey, I have they do video production or some kind of video production, and
Hmm.
they drafted the contract themselves, and it wasn't great. Honestly, it was missing a lot of terms, and now the other party breached the contract. But my client had already kind of said no to other business to perform the services for this contract,
Mm.
but the other party wasn't paying. So now he comes to me and said, hey, well, what can we do? We need to get paid. But
Mm.
there's three major issues with that contract. The first one was that didn't include important terms
Yeah.
regarding late payments, regarding interest, regarding attorney's fees. Okay,
Mm.
if he had an attorney's fee provision in there, then it would be much easier for me to say, okay, let's, even if we need to, file a claim against this person, because they're going to have to pay my attorney's fees, and
Yeah.
now they're going to be much more inclined to settle and pay something for pay what they're owed, because now if we go after them, the amount they owe is going to be increased, quite significantly because of
Yeah.
my attorney's fees. So attorney's fees provisions you'll always want to have in there. Especially if it's a services agreement where the chance that the other party will breach is much higher than you're breaching.
Hmm.
Um, the other things were just the clarity of the terms. What
Yeah.
you don't want is ambiguity of terms, and this is where a lot of people who try to do their own DIY
Hmm.
contracts or find things online, they don't recognize that there's ambiguity in those contracts, and that's going to be a big problem when it comes to questions about whether terms are enforceable, how to deal with
Hmm.
disputes, because ambiguities are expensive. Ambiguities are
Yeah.
very, very expensive. And there have been cases litigated about a comma in a contract and hundreds of thousands of dollars spent about the placement of a comma. So you
Mm-hmm.
want a contract that is precise, that is explicit, and that is that doesn't have any ambiguity, because that could really be a
Yeah.
challenge for you if it does. Um,
So,
yeah.
so if somebody's watching this and as they kind of are listening to this in their car and they're like, we never have had the tightest, legal situation, and that's something that they know. Like maybe they have some contracts out there, exactly like you said. There's only so much money, there's only so much time. How do you normally approach where somebody should kind of start? And again, understanding nothing's one size fits all, different companies, different industries, but I just mean like logic and methodology, like framework. Somebody's listening to this and they're like, where do I start? I got this contract, this. Where do I start?
Yeah, I would say think about where your biggest risk is. Like, think about
Mm,
where your biggest risks are with the business. Is it someone not paying you? Is it a product being defective and you getting sued? Uh,
mm,
is it and maybe sometimes you don't know, because honestly, in law,
yeah,
a lot of clients, you don't know
that's
what you don't
fair.
know. Yeah, yeah, you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's where we come in and say,
Mhm.
hey, we'll review your contract for a few $100s. Let's have a consult about it, and let's
Yeah.
discuss, okay, what are the issues here that maybe you haven't thought about, because
Mhm.
that often comes up. We're trained. I've been doing this for 14 years now, a
Yeah.
while. I've taken a master class on contract drafting in
Yeah.
plain English, which I pride myself on, because I made a significant investment of time and money
Mhm.
because I feel that contracts need to be clear, and a lot of contracts are so antiquated in the language.
Mm.
They reference Latin. A lot of people don't think critically about contracts. Some lawyers and non-lawyers, you just take a contract and say, okay, well, this is how other people did it, so I'll just copy what they did.
Yeah.
But why did they do it? Like, people sometimes do, these templates are just reused and reused without the critical eye taken to these, like, about why. Asking the
Mm.
question why is so important as a lawyer. Why is it written like this?
Mm.
What is the point of this language? Because oftentimes you'll see language in contracts that really has no meaning or place in that contract, but yet
Mhm.
lawyers just include it just because that's how other contracts were, and they feel that's safer to include everything as opposed to include what's
Yeah.
only necessary for that agreement.
What do you mean by when you say that you took a master class in contracts and that you invested a significant amount of time into learning that? Like, what do you mean by all of that?
Yeah, so here's a great plug for Ken Adams. Kenneth Adams. He's written now, I think, 5 or 6 editions of
Mm.
uh, I think it's called contract drafting in plain English, I believe.
Mm.
I hope I'm not butchering the title, but yeah, Ken Adams.
Yeah.
If you look him up online, it's really about drafting clear contracts, and he has a
Mhm.
master class for lawyers, and I think
Mhm.
in-house people who deal with contracts as well,
Mhm.
that helps you understand, okay, how do you think about drafting terms? And he
Mm.
gets very, very detailed about, even the use of shall. There's a whole probably section on the use of shall and when is appropriate and when is it not appropriate. He talks a lot about just the details and the minutia of what makes sense when drafting contracts, what
Mm.
language is precise and what language is vague and
Mm.
or ambiguous, and what's the difference between all that.
Mm.
A lot of people don't think about these things because that's not your job, but there's a
Yeah.
lot to be said. There's a lot written about language, and how we draft agreements is really about the use of language, and are you being
Mhm.
precise or are you not. And I think, I pride myself on being a little bit of a nerd about that, because I think you
Yeah.
need to be to do it well.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reason I asked you that question, by the way, and I wanted to drill a little bit further, is because it's not assumed that everybody's created equal in this particular part of it. Like you said,
Yeah.
like some people are reusing things that have been used. They're not like it doesn't mean just because and not downing anybody, but you can I can tell that you really enjoy digging and nerding out and into the contract side of things and making sure things are done right.
Yeah, yeah. No, I do, and I mean, I pride myself on being, a dork about that stuff, a nerd, because I think you want that. I
People
mean,
should want, by the way. That's awesome.
yeah, I think you want someone who's going to say, "Oh, well, let's think about this. Does this make sense?" To question it,
Mhm.
and you don't want a lawyer who's just going to be a yes person saying, "Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's fine." You want
Yeah,
to think about, okay, what are the pros and cons of this language? And I mean, of course, that takes time and that takes an investment by the
yeah,
clients. Some clients just want a quick contract, and more power to
sure.
them. But I like to think about these things, analyze them, and say, okay, does this make sense for this deal?
Yeah,
And I'll be realistic. If it's a small deal, maybe it doesn't make sense to spend thousands of dollars on
for
the
sure.
contract. But if it's a
Yeah.
bigger deal, and if it's for something that could help really, you want to invest in the growth of your business,
Mhm.
then yeah, I think it makes sense to invest in getting a contract that is
Yeah,
right and makes sense for what you're trying to do.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, with contracts, you want to be really picky about what that language is, and
mhm,
how it's worded, and also, as someone who's, if you're not a lawyer, question the language, question the lawyer, and,
yeah,
and make sure that it makes sense to you too, because sometimes lawyers put things in that maybe they don't always understand. So
mm,
it's really, really
yeah.
important to do that.
So one of the ways that you work with your clients is this concept of fractional general counsel. Now I've heard of fractional CFOs, I've even fractional CMOs, but fractional general counsel. Maybe give us a little bit of insight on what that looks like.
Yeah, so essentially I come in and sometimes I'll have an email with your company.
Mhm.
I'll almost act as another arm of your company,
Mm,
but you're not paying me a salary. Essentially,
yeah,
you're paying us for the work that we do as your outside or fractional general counsel, but I'm
yeah,
there to understand what you want to build, how do you want to build it, and understand the more kind of business and legal affairs of your company, as opposed to
mm,
just drafting contracts for you, saying, "Hey, I want this contract done. Please do it." So it's
yeah,
it's a much closer relationship that I build with those clients, and really help them create. I really help create a lot more value
mhm,
for them, because it's not just thinking about, okay, what are the legal issues here, but how do we think of these legal issues in the context of your broader business, and how do you want to grow, and what does that
mm,
growth look like? So I ask a lot of those questions when it comes to my fractional general counsel work, and I really enjoy it, because I get to really build a deeper connection, and help those clients really grow, who want to grow,
yeah,
without them having to pay several $100,000 for a
mhm,
lawyer, in-house lawyer.
yeah. And so, before we get off the line here, I want you to go just a little bit further and maybe just tell us about some of the scope. Obviously, this particular interview was on contracts, but I know you do more than contracts. Maybe give us an idea of the scope of kind of some of the things you handle.
Yeah, so we work with a lot of startups. If you're thinking about structuring a company, how to
Mhm.
understand equity distribution between clients. So it's a lot of startup work, a lot of corporate governance work, a lot of
Yeah.
companies who are trying to maybe even redo their cap table, and figuring out, okay, we need to reallocate shares. We can come in
Yeah.
there, analyze what you have, and then help you kind of think about, how do you reallocate shares, issue
Mhm.
options, and also, as just growth. It's not just startup, but it's also growing, or growing up. It's
Mhm.
how do you go from a startup to a grown up company? Meaning, how do you scale? How do you think
Yeah.
about that? How do you Because I think sometimes that is more difficult. Is the startup is one thing, but now that you have traction, how do you
Yeah.
have the right agreements in place? Do you have the operating agreement? Do you have the
Mhm.
shareholder agreement that you need between your founders? So make sure everyone's on the same page about growth. So we help you guys. We help clients with the startup, with the
Mhm.
financing and the growing. We'll do up to kind of Series A or Series B financing for a lot of
Mhm.
companies. We'll also do notes and convertible notes and different types of financing, and
Yeah.
then also IP. We do a lot of what I call soft IP. Soft
Mhm.
IP essentially is, there's four elements, it's four areas of IP. There's trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, and patents. We
Yeah.
focus on trademarks, copyrights and really trade secrets. Trade secrets are kind of contract related, but then
Mhm.
trademarks and copyrights have their own kind of body of law.
Yeah.
I'm not a patent attorney, but we work with great patent attorneys that we can also connect people with as well.
Mhm.
So it's really focusing in that area, and also some employment contracts as well. So it's like thinking about, okay, what's the universe of contracts that a new business will need? We help make sure that they get set up. We've done employee
Mhm.
handbooks, employment agreements, and looking at stock even compensation plans. And then
Yeah.
also, I think the job of a good general counsel is to connect you with the specialists when needed. If you have a tax question, we have great tax people we can connect you with.
Yeah.
If you have a dispute, or if, let's say, there's like a labor dispute, we have a great labor firm we can connect you
Mhm.
with. So we really pride ourselves on the relationships we have as well with other lawyers to get the help you need.
Yeah. Well, Pankaj, I just have to say it has been great having you on the show today and bringing this content to our audience as well. I mean, I learned a lot. I'm sure they did as well. That being said, if somebody is listening to this and they want to follow up and they want to connect with you and your team, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that?
So, our website, you can also email us at legal@carbonlg.com. Our website is carbonlg.com. And I'm on TikTok, on virtual GC, trying to put videos out there. And also recently
Yeah.
been putting more on YouTube. It's just Pankaj Raval, business attorney and advisor,
Mhm.
as our channel. We're putting a lot of videos, a lot of content out there as well.
Mhm.
Really trying to be as helpful as possible for our clients, just so people can make better decisions. My job, I love this because I want to see. I think one of the best things you can do personally as an entrepreneur is create
Mhm.
jobs. If you can be a
Mhm.
job creator, you're doing such a fantastic job for this world, and such a great service. And that's what I want to empower. I want to empower people to
Yeah.
do that, and do it consciously, and do it mindfully,
Mhm.
and help, help other society.
It's awesome. And one more time, website for everyone.
Carbonlg.com. So Carbon Law Group, but carbonlg.com.
Yeah, wonderful. And we'll for all the audience listening and watching this, we'll put all that information in the show notes so that you can just click on the link and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or engaging in an episode, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission. Why do they do what they do? Like, what gets them fired up to go out into the world and to make a difference? If that's type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, we welcome you. Hit that subscribe button. We have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Pankaj, again, as always, thank you. Look forward to the next time we get to do this. Thanks again.
Thanks so much. Thank you for having me. It's a great time.